Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody, and what a pleasure it is as the sun breaks through the clouds here on the top of the tower. I welcome one of my all-time favourites, as you know, Anthony Horowitz. It's a true story. Welcome aboard. Nice to see you.
It's so nice, as always, to be talking to you.
Yeah, it really is. Congratulations on Close to Death, your latest in the Hawthorne series. I'm going to be really honest because I'm a fan. You know, you hear young people once upon a time were queuing outside at midnight for waiting for Harry Potter to come out. I would go into bookshops knowing that I would even get a preview copy of your book, but just hoping I missed it, so it would land. I mean, that's how keen I am on these. But they're just so funny and charming and clever. Why don't we cut to the chase here and get the plot out on the table and let people to.
So.
Yeah.
Well, it's another in the series of what are called the Hawthorne Horowitz books, in which a detective called Daniel Hawthorne, who has been fired from Scotland Yard for reasons that aren't clear but which are quite murky, is working as a private detective and decides to up his salary by hiring a writer to write about him, to write about his investigations. And what makes these books sort of slightly meta is that the writer he hires is me. And so for 4 books I have been following in his footsteps, desperately hoping he'll solve the case.
Yes.
Because if he doesn't, I don't have a book, and regretting ever getting involved in the first place. And in this one, the publishers have asked me for a 5th book, but there hasn't been a murder. So I've slightly changed the formula this time, in that I'm no longer his sidekick. I am listening as he tells me the story of a murder that took place 5 years earlier in Richmond-on-Thames, a sort of a nightmare neighbour scenario. Yes. The title, Close to Death, is a play on words. It's all set in a private residential close. Mm-hmm. And he's telling me what happened. I'm writing the book. He's criticising me the whole time. I'm jealous of his new sidekick, or the sidekick at that time, a man called John Dudley, and that is the setup.
Yes, and it's a version of you. I love the version because you're quite, you know, you're insecure and you're precious, and I'm sure none of these things in real life, Anthony.
What I am is unsuccessful and fairly hopeless as a sidekick, and I never get the answer right, and I ask inappropriate questions. In 2 of the books, I get stabbed. When my publishers first heard I had this idea of putting myself into the book, they said, "You're not going to sort of, beat your own drum too much and sell your books and say how great you are." And I said, no, the opposite. And it's true. I'm not a major character. I am just the narrator, but I am sort of, I'm a fairly sort of ineffectual character, I have to say.
No, but most amusing and to great effect. And the Close to Death it takes it on the relationship because you leave plenty of room for Hawthorne's characters in future books. You're always dropping crumbs as to what happened to him and who is he and what sort of
that is the idea. I'm planning 12 of these books in total in the series, and in every book we find out a little bit more about Hawthorne, which is what happens when a writer writes about a character, whether it's Alex Rider or whether it's Doyle writing Holmes or whoever. The writer learns more and more about their main character. It's part of the natural process of writing. In these books, I'm desperately searching for clues as to what made Daniel Hawthorne such a difficult man with so many sort of, views that I don't share and such a slightly sort of sour view of life. And with every book, as you say, we meet more of the characters in his past, his brother or his adoptive brother. This time we meet the people who employ him, a rather sinister organisation called Fenchurch International, a sort of a security firm. And there are more clues about Reeth, this town in Yorkshire, or village in Yorkshire, where something bad happened. So I'm sort of getting closer, but it'll take me 12 books to arrive at the truth.
This is book 4?
This is number 5.
5. So there's plenty more.
Not even halfway.
No, and you are, this morning, you were waiting before coming on air, and you were sitting downstairs writing away. What were you writing?
I was actually writing my next book. Magpie Murders was followed by Moonflower Murders, and I'm now writing a 3rd book in that series. Yes, it does my head in a little bit to be talking about one set of books with you while thinking about another set downstairs. But I had to arrive here early for all sorts of reasons, so we sat in your really rather very nice cafe, again with excellent views, and I managed to get about half a chapter done, which is great.
Not bad. Longhand?
Always with pen. You can see my hand covered in turquoise ink. I've been trying to wash my hands. I couldn't come in here looking as ridiculous as I did.
I have a fountain pen, and I was using it recently, and it was covered in ink. And so I don't know if it's you, because we didn't meet too long ago. So, no, it's a badge of honour to have inky fingers.
Oh, absolutely. There's a writer called Stephen Kavanagh who I admire very much, and he recommends pens to me and fountain pens.
But you're an aficionado of the fountain pen, aren't you?
I love fountain pens. I love the inky fingers and blue ink and different. You know my favourite colour ink, actually?
No.
You'll like this, Ryan. There's an ink I bought called Writer's Blood.
No,
and isn't that a great title? And
what
it's
is it,
sort of
maroon or something?
It's a rusty brown.
Oh,
it's
I
a slightly
want
dried
this.
brown. How can you not write with
Where do
that?
you buy such a thing?
Oh, there are websites you can
Oh,
go
of course
on
there are.
and,
Of course
and,
there are.
and you know, you get addicted. That's the trouble. How many pens can one writer have?
How many have you got?
I'd say about 20 or so.
And give us for the low budget, high budget. So let's go high, the really pricey one.
I'll tell you, generally speaking, I find the very expensive pens less satisfying than the very sort of cheaper pens that I buy. I'm going to forget all the brand names, so I can't, I'm afraid, give them a plug, which is sort of, they would have sent me heaps of merchandise if I'd
loads of blood ink.
Sure, but generally speaking, a pen around about £30 is the sort of pen I like to buy, rather than the 300 jobs.
There's something, even watching, we'll talk about this in a minute, watching Andrew Scott last night in Ripley, and he's using this old, looks like a fountain pen, the scratch on the paper, even the sound is something to behold.
No, pens are great in their history. I remember when I was invited to join the Royal Society of Authors, I signed the book with a pen that Byron had used, and that was sort of pretty exciting.
Okay, stay with us, we'll be back shortly. My guest this afternoon, I should say, Anthony Horowitz, marking the occasion of his beautiful new and just funny, smart, tricky book, Close to Death, which is the 5th installment in the Hawthorne series. Are you an online or an offline person, Anthony? Do you have a presence online?
I have gone offline big time.
Yeah,
I have resigned from Twitter or X, it is now called, and feel so much better for it.
Yeah.
My wife actually insisted that I do it for a New Year's resolution this year, and on the 31st of December I pressed the delete button, which actually took a lot of I had to really gear myself up to do it, and can I manage without it? But almost from the moment my finger hit that button and it all vanished from the screen, I have just felt like a different person, so much happier.
You sound like somebody who said, right, this is the last drink I'm ever going to have.
It wasn't quite like that. It was more like being told by the doctor that you are finally in remission, that your illness is behind you and you're okay and you can go and have a normal life.
Yeah.
And although I do miss the followers, I love the way that I could actually connect with people who liked my books. I used to have this habit of every 10,000th word I would announce what word it was, and everybody used to enjoy that. And I never lied. I was always honest about what word it was.
Yeah.
And that has gone. And the fact that people could just say, I liked your books, and I could say thank you. But it was the other stuff that was coming in that was so destructive that I just had to. It was all or nothing.
Just noise.
Also addictive. It was so addictive. You look how many hours you waste in a day.
Lot.
And if you're sitting by yourself writing a book for hours and hours in a room, you do need something to do that's different, but not that. And anything, I drink copious amounts of green tea, which is trips down to the kitchen. I stroke my dog. I go for walks. I sort of pace around the house and do other things. But I was actually just sitting at the computer screen, and that was not good for me in any way.
I'm bouncing around because you've written James Bond books for the Ian Fleming estate, and of course you've
3 of those and 2 Sherlock Holmes books. The continuation novels.
I know you're just living the kind of the childhood writer's dream. I mean, you wanted to be a writer since the age of 9. You knew it was going to be written in the stars and beyond.
The joy is that I was able to succeed at it, because I often wonder what would have happened if the books hadn't taken off. And don't forget, it took me 10 children's books before I wrote Alex Rider in 2000, and suddenly, entered into a different sphere, and my career was launched. And since then, I've moved through children's books now into adult books and crime fiction and such, and I'm going down that route. But it's and I feel so lucky again that I've managed to cross the line from kids to adults, which is not something that not every writer has managed to do.
We spoke briefly before we came on air, and I mentioned in passing Andrew Scott and Ripley and Jimmy Carr, who
we were having a
yesterday.
conversation about those
and
two.
You said it's funny you should mention those two people because
they have both been in shows of mine. It's always like a Trivial Pursuits question, one of those complicated quizzes. But in the original Alex Rider film Stormbreaker, Jimmy Carr had a sort of a fairly small walk-on part, which he did brilliantly, incidentally. All that personality was already there.
Yes.
And Andrew Scott appeared as sort of possibly Foyle's son, we never found out, in a really very good episode of Foyle's War. And he then was quite young. He was already being very, very highly spoken of and did a fantastic performance. And it's rather wonderful to meet actors in their early days before they have fame. Yes. Because, you sort of can tell. They've got something something about them, not just the ability to, to perform well, but a certain sort of magnetism, an attractiveness. I remember meeting, forgive the name dropping, but I met Ewan McGregor at a party once, and this was long before he was, the big star of it. He appears incidentally in Close to Death a few times.
Yes,
there are
he
mentions.
does, yeah.
The celebrity dentist has photos of him on the shelves, and maybe that's why I chose him. But I just remember thinking to myself, this is just a sort of ordinary guy in a room, and he's just chatting. But he isn't. I mean, he is a star, and you can tell.
You can tell the stardust, and it's charisma. The young people call it Rizz now, as you probably know. But
they call it what?
Rizz.
Rizz. I've not heard
this.
that.
This is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing it says somebody's got Rizz or the Rizz, and that means that it's just a shorthand for charisma. So now you can hang out with young people. You're welcome.
I certainly should, Rizz.
When you're young, they're not. You've adult.
I just think how well that would suit you, Ryan.
Oh no, I've never
got Rizz, definitely.
I use it with a soupçon of irony. I've hardly got around going, anyone got the Rizz?
It's even in your name.
An element of that. So with the next one coming up, you're halfway through the third in the series of Magpie. I always recommend Magpie Murders to people because they'll go, what's this? And they write it down. They go, the Magpie Murders. No, I didn't say the Magpie Murders.
Absolutely
and
right.
It is
definitely
detail.
Magpie Murders.
Yeah.
But I remember you actually interviewed me about that a very, very long time ago when it first came out. And then Moonflower Murders followed. We filmed both of those. Yes, just yesterday I saw episode 6 of the new series, which will be out on the BBC later this year. And as we said, I am now writing the third one and have been doing that downstairs. And we might televise that too. Like wonderful Leslie Manville and Tim McMullen as both the editor and the detective.
Yeah, it's great. So exciting. Anyway, I love talking to you and hanging out with you. And we've talked before many, many times, and we've got podcast to discuss as well for another day. I'll tell everyone about that. But for now, Anthony Horowitz, author of Close to Death. That's your latest hardback. It's out now and on paperback as well, is it?
No, not yet. That will be, maybe at airports, but
for
paperback will be later this year.
Okay, comes with a golden recommendation from this side of the world. And thanks for coming in to see us, as always. What a pleasure.
Thank you, Ryan.